So let me welcome on board Shashank Srivastava joining in on the show right now. Shashank, hi, morning. Strong growth once again. What led to this, and do you see the momentum hold through?
Yeah, so industry figure, if you see for wholesale in February was 373,000 against about 335,000 last year. That's a growth of 11.3%. Pretty good growth. In fact, not only was it the highest ever February, it was the third highest ever month in the history of Indian auto industry passenger vehicles. So it's been a great month as far as wholesale is concerned. However, when you look at the retail figure, it's about 40,000 less than the wholesale. That means that the inventory in the network goes up by that volume. Inventory estimates in the volume for the industry is about 300,000 units, and that's a pretty large stock, which is about 27, 28 days of stock. So I think going forward, it will now depend on how much the retail happens, because I would expect wholesale and retail to be similar and not have to be too different as we have seen in the recent past, because the pipeline is now full, and therefore there is very little scope for OEMs to add on to this stock in terms of higher wholesale. So that is the situation. But if you look at the whole year, then the market should end up this financial year around 42.1 lakh or so. That should be a growth of about 8.2% over last year's figure of 38.95 lakh. Next year projections seem to be in that just above 43 lakhs. So the growth projections on a very large base is a little smaller for next year than what we have seen in this year.
Okay, so the growth projections are clearly smaller, just around 8% this year and almost flat for the coming year. But since you talked about how the retail numbers are the key monitorable going forward, talk to us about what are you witnessing as a trend there, whether it's the small car segment or the CNG segment. What are the trends on the ground?
On the future for the small car market, I think one of the reasons why we have seen a decline has been the affordability factor has come down, which means the prices have gone up faster than the income levels in this segment. Eh, what we expect is that going forward, if we see economic growth, the demographics of our country and the fact that there are 45 to 47% of the people in the first time buyers, and public transportation not so developed, I would expect this segment to be significant going forward. And also going forward, they should see some sort of a turnaround maybe in a couple of years. Our expectation from current research seems to be 2026 second half. On the SUV, on the CNG front, yes, CNG has had a very good run. In fact, the growth in this year so far has been 52%. Maruti Suzuki has a market share of about 70% in the CNG market. So it's a very crucial market for us. In fact, for Maruti Suzuki, 26% of the total sale is now CNG. And the basic reason why CNG has done so well for Maruti and industry is that the cost of running of CNG vehicles is much lower than diesel and gasoline. And as long as these price difference in the fuel prices continue, I think CNG will have a good run. So I would expect the growth for CNG in the next year also to be pretty good.
Right. So could you update us on the market share as well? We believe Maruti has gained marginal market share uh, overall in the month of February. Any comments on the same?
So market share for Maruti Suzuki about 43% for February. It's pretty good. Overall for the year, April to February, also market share increasing about 0.4%. And as I mentioned earlier, the reason is that Maruti grew faster than the competition. The overall growth for Maruti is upward of 9% as against 8% or so for the competition for the whole year. Of course, driven largely by the introduction of those SUVs, including the Grand Vitara, the Fronx, Jimny, and the Invicto MPV. So those are given us those additional numbers. Going forward, our target, of course, remains 50% of the market share, and that means that we will have to improve our market share for SUV segment, because SUV segment is now about 50% of the total market, where our market share is just around 22%. So unless we improve our market share in SUV sector, it might be difficult to achieve 50%, because we are already at 70% of hatch market. We are 55% in the sedan market. We are 94% of the van market. and we are 52% of the NPV market. So clearly, our the task is cut out very clear, which is to, in order to achieve 50% market share, we have to improve our share in the SUV sector.
Sure, Shashank, also talk to us about the discounting in the system, because we understand that for certain models, discounting has actually gone up. Could you probably quantify it for us on a month-on-month basis? How's discounting moved?
As a general trend, if you are comparing this discount levels for January and February with December, it's a little different, because in December, both the OEMs as well as the dealers don't want to keep the previous year's stock, which is 2023 stock, for carried forward to 2024. So obviously, you would see lower wholesale in December and retails much higher as people push through higher sales promotion levels, the OEMs. That moderates in January and in February, as we have seen even in this current year. As I said, there may be specific models depending on the segment or the powertrain that they have, where you could see higher or lower discounts, but those are specific conditions. As a general trend, you would see a decline in the discount levels in the new year months, January, February. As far as the headroom for the future is concerned, it is really now going to depend on the booking and the inquiry level going forward, because the luxury which was enjoyed by auto OEMs in the last 3 years, which was to continue with wholesale even if retail comes down, because there were supply side constraints, and therefore the stock levels at the dealership was low, and therefore you could add to the stock levels, the inventory levels at the dealership by pushing wholesales. That now, with the current levels of stock at the dealership, may not be possible, and therefore any wholesale and any growth in the future as far as the wholesale number is concerned will entirely depend on the retail movement.
Right. Okay, Shashank, great to have you on the show, and what a fabulous ride Motown has had, especially the passenger vehicle segment. Can't say the same about CVs as well as tractors for sure. But yeah, and that's reflective in the stock prices as well. Let me